Today we're going to learn 4 halachas. We're going to learn 4 halachas. Vav, Zayin, Ches, and Tes. We're going to skip I'm not going to read you the Ramah Vav, because we did that last time, which was on purpose. So because Vav, Zayin, and Ches are connected to each other, and then you'll see how Tes is connected to it also. Okay. First I'm going to do Vav, Zayin, and Ches until you get to see them for real. I'm on the screen. Okay, and that's like this. Kli, Shekafa, Piv, Lamata, Vechnisa, Lamayim. You have a kli and you stick it, you put it face down, you stick it into the water. In piv tsar ktsas, if it has a narrow neck, and you don't turn it right side up, then also like Tevillas is not going to work. So what you did is you took the bottle and you stuck it in, okay? And you stuck it into the water. What? No. You cover piv lamata, you put the opening facing down. So the green, blue is the water. Blue is water, and the green is the air. Okay, so the air is going to sit into there. Officially, even if you stick it all the way in, you're not going to get you're not going to get water into what's now the top of the key, which is the bottom of the bottle. You're not going to get water into it because it's stuck on the top, and there's an air bubble that's going to get stuck into there. Okay. We're not going to talk about but the Bach says he doesn't understand what's going on. Why does the Shulchan have to say that it's piv, that it has piv tsar ktas, which is what would happen if you have without a piv tsar ktas, you have the same air bubble also, okay? What? That's the Bach's kashrus, okay? The Bach says very strong words about the Mechaber. But okay, so this is the first case is, if you have an air bubble like this, the Mechaber says is, you have to turn the bottle upside down, and that way the bubble will come out, okay? The bubble...
Is this a right? So what is the pshat? And the fact that that's no good.
What's your question about what do you mean?
Is this a right? Is it because of chatzitza?
It's chatzitza, yeah.
Chatzitza?
Yes. We're going to talk about that a little more later on, but it's understood to be a chatzitza. Okay? It's not a question of being Israeli, because it's in the water. It is in the water. Okay, the whole case is in the water.
It should be good.
There's a mission. Okay, there's a mission. The whole very first case is a raw mission. Okay, so this is not every word, but this is a mission. Okay, next.
What do you see from there?
The Tzar Tzas is not a mission.
No, the Tzar Tzas, that's the Mechaber. It has to. It's in the water.
You have to touch the water.
Yes. We're going to talk about it.
It's in the water. It's total.
Okay, next halacha zayin. Okay, Kli Tsar Mikan. V'rochav be'emtza. Okay, it's narrow on the edges, but it's wide in the middle. I don't understand why someone made this clear like that. So then what happens is, okay, if you stick the kli in, okay, it's narrow on the edges and it's wider in the middle. So what's going to happen is you're going to end again with the greenish ear. You get an ear bubble here in the middle of the kli when you put it in. So you got to turn it to the side. The what? I know, but it has 2 openings on the edges. So I didn't see what was it. I didn't get that part. Okay, whatever. I don't understand what this.
You have an opening on both edges for this to work.
No, but the case that he describes, why would he say tsar mikan umikan?
It could be an opening on one edge, and it just has a bubble in the middle, like a fancy vase or something.
But then it didn't have to. Okay, whatever it is, whatever the case is, another case of an ear bubble. Okay, another ear bubble. Okay, and now Allah ches kol kli shepiv tsar yosim sheferes hanoid. A kli that has a narrow opening. Over here, the word yosim here means it's even more narrow than a sheferes hanoid. Okay, yosim means even more narrow. Not that the opening is bigger than. It means it's even more narrow than a sheferes hanoid. So what's the din? It's a kli with a little opening. Tzarech lahashois b'mayim ad sheyismal. You have to leave it in the water till it gets filled up. That is, when you put it in, you have to leave it in the water give it a couple seconds so that the air will come out. Okay, which is our same bottle. Now it's right side up. We can fill it with water beforehand, and the chiddush here is, aside from the air bubble part, which we sort of saw beforehand, is that the opening on the top doesn't have to be a sheferes hanoid. We spoke about this last time, I think it was last time, that even though this kli is in the water, and the opening is not a sheferes hanoid, the din is like this. If the kli that's becoming toivled, you don't need a sheferes hanoid. I mean, not only in this case, where the kli itself is being toivled, but if you had a kli inside of another kli, and the outside kli was tummy, and the inside kli was also tummy, they're both being toivled together, then you don't need a sheferes hanoid. That rule of sheferes hanoid is only if the outside kli is tahar. But if both Keilim need to be toivled, I mean, Tevillas Keilim or Tumatik Tevillah, then you don't need a sheferes hanoid.
Why did Bechal relevant here how wide the opening is? Is that the same kashrus of the Bach?
No, because the chiddush here has to do with the fact that even though the opening is very narrow, don't worry about the sheferes hanoid issues, because here the thing itself is being turned. Okay, So we have three dinim here about air bubbles. Okay, that was Vav Zayin and Ches tell us that you can't have air bubbles in the kli when you type. Okay, now we're going to now talk about. I'll read you halacha test, and that's what we're going to spend more of our time on about this din of Beis Hastrarim, and that is like this. The halacha test is not coming on the screen. Okay, Yadas Keilim Shehem Aruchos V'Asidin L'Koitzason. If you have a handle on the kli, and the handle is very long, and the plan is to cut off the handle, matro ad makom she'asa v'koitzen v'dayeh. So all you have to do is tevel the kli is until it gets to the place, the break point where you're going to eventually break it off, and that's enough. Okay, so next time we're going to talk about that there's a little bit of a problem next time we're going to talk about that there's part of the handle sticking out of the water, so the whole kli is not under the water. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about next time. That's what we're going to talk about now, which is that what about the fact that the break point is a chatzitza? What about the fact where the handle that's going to be broken off is blocking this part where the old where the other handle is? That's a question. Okay, this is what we just said is the Mishnah also. Okay, and the Mishnah says that. So many Rishonim ask that question, and the Rash gives the answer to the question is, it's not a problem. Don't worry, I think it's brought in the Taz of the Shach over here also. He says, don't worry about the fact that the piece that's going to break off is covering up the part that's not going to be broken off. He says, because it's a Beis Hastrarim. And there's a rule that in a kli does not have a din of basis, doesn't have to be free of chatzitzas in its Beis Hastrarim. Let's say in a person is being taival, if the inside of my mouth is a Beis Hastrarim. Beis Hastrarim means a place that's usually covered up, or a concealed area. In my mouth, if I have a chatzitza that affects my tevillah, I can't taival with a chatzitza in my mouth, even though I don't have to get water in my mouth. It just has to be royal biyasmayim. I don't have to open my mouth, but I can't have a chatzitza in my mouth. But in Keilim, there's no din of no problems of having chatzitzas in the Beis Hastrarim. And that din we read also in Halacha Hey. When I read it, I told you I was passing it by because we're going to do it later. The Mechaber says, Magal Shnish B'Yodim and Asaf L'Fnim in the Chatzitzah Neish Hiki Beis Hastrarim, because it's a Beis Hastrarim. What do you mean? It's a Beis Hastrarim. And in Beis Hastrarim for Keilim, you don't have to worry about chatzitzas. Okay, so that's how the Rash learns. I'll tell you.
I'm not going to say why it's a Beis Hastrarim.
Because
the whole reason that you don't have to tell him because you're going to take it off. I mean, that you're going to make it always Beis Hastrarim. That's not
okay, there are those who answer that question. Okay, that's not for now. And there are also answer the opposite question. Maybe for now it should be considered below it because it's now completely cut. Okay, but put those on the side. The Rash says it's a Beis Hastrarim. So there are others who answer otherwise. Not for us for now. There's a Taisus who gives a different pshat. It says it's a special kind of a kli that the way you're going to break it off, there's actually nothing covered over of anything. It's a special way. The kli is made in a special way. The Mechaber, by saying the Mishnah as is saying like the Rash, which he tells you that. It's a secret. He tells you he's saying like the Rash that the case is the way it is, and don't worry about the fact that you're going to snap the piece in half later. It's not a chatzitza. Okay, and that's also the halacha. He was also about there's no chatzitzas in the Beis Hastrarim.
Does anybody has right now it's the kli in the whole kli?
Next time we're going to talk about the fact that the whole kli is not under the water. This part of the kli is out of the water. Part of the kli is sticking out of the mikvah.
Why don't you have to tell the whole thing?
Next time we're going to talk about that. Good. I'll say it again. We'll talk about that next time. Okay. So now we're going to talk about this Rash and the Mechaber to understand what's going on.
Is a picture of the Keurig coming up?
No, we are going to talk about a Keurig. We are going to talk about it when we get to the end. But we give me some time. Okay. So now, many of the dinim in this whole siman are from one Mishnah at the beginning of the 10th parak of Mikvahs. Okay. Now, what we're going to talk about, surprise, is one case in the Mishnah that's not brought in Shulchan Aruch. Okay. Now that case is not brought in Shulchan Aruch. You'll see for a very simple reason. Okay. And that's the din of a thing called Kalmarin. Okay. Kalmarin. It turns out all the people on the Mishnah, like the Rambam and those, and the Aruch says it also, say it's a word Kalmaroi in Italian, or Greek, or something like that, which means inkwell, okay? But for our purposes, we're going to describe it as a very specific kind of inkwell, okay? And that is like this. Okay, look at the picture on the right for now, okay? It's an inkwell it's a spill-proof inkwell. Okay, it's a spill-proof inkwell. It's like if you have young children with the cups that can't spill. It's the same concept, and that is like this: you have an inkwell, and you have to dig your quill in to get your ink out. But what happens is you could easily knock it over while you're working. So what they did is in this inkwell they built little cavities going up the sides. See where the number one is? The little cavities going up the sides, so that if the inkwell were to tip over, look up. I was going to put it on. I forgot to. On the screen, if the ink were to tip over, the ink would slip into the cavity instead of spilling onto your paper. Okay, so it's a spill-proof. It's the same concept. Little kids have cups like that you can't spill it, because if it knocks over, the water flows on the side instead of out the opening, and therefore you save whatever you're writing on. Okay, that's not what this thing is. Now, again, it seems that in Greek the word Kalmarin just means inkwell, but in the Mishnah is talking about a very specific kind. This specific kind of Kalmarin. Okay, and what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says that if you stick this into the mikveh, if you stick this in the picture on the left, we're going to get to later. The picture on the left, that's the picture. In the Mishnayos of Rav Kapach, in the Pirush Mishnayos of the Rambam, of what the Kalmarin looks like. Okay, so the Mishnah says if you stick this into the water, what's going to happen is on those two cavities, that the cavities that are on the side. I mean, it really goes all the way around. In the picture, it's two-dimensional, but it really goes. Those cavities are not going to have water in them because they're going to have the air bubbles are going to be stuck into there. So the Mishnah says among the other things that are problems with air bubbles, the Mishnah says if you stick this into the mikveh, it's not going to be work unless you drill a hole in the side of it, like you see in the picture on the left. Unless you drill a hole in the side of it, then that'll let the air out. Well, that'll make it that you can type. Okay, but if you stick it in like this, it's not also it's feel. So
Sideways.
what? It's not going to help. There's always going to be air bubbles in it. Whichever way you're going to turn it, you're going to end up with air bubble.
Do you need the whole thing? If you do it this side, it'll be air bubble on that side, and if you turn it up, it'll air bubble on that side.
I didn't play with it in the mikvah to try to see if it would work. I don't know. The Mishnah says the only way to fix it is to make a hole in it. Okay, so I'm guessing that the Mitzvah is what.
I'm asking, is that up your look? Do you have to have all the air bubbles gone in one moment, or should have be as
We're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, we're going to talk about it. Now, so the reason why the Mechaber doesn't say in this case is of course obvious, okay, because it's not a Kashrus, okay, so it doesn't belong in Hilchos Tevillas Keilim. Okay, the Mishnayos and Mikvaros are about Keilim that need to be toivel. That parak is about Keilim that need to be toivel because they're tummy. Okay, we're talking about Hilchos. This is called Dvarim HaChotzim Tevillas Keilim. Of course, nobody hopefully eats out of this thing, so it's not negated to Tevillas Keilim. So he doesn't bring that case to the Mishnah. Okay, but Mishnah asks a question. Okay, in the way you're listening to me, the question is pretty straightforward. The Mishnah asks it there in the Mishnah. He says, wait a second. That area where the air bubbles are going to be is a Beis Hastrarim. Okay? Why are you telling me that I care if there are air in that pocket? The inside of the inkwell, the deep on those recesses, that's a Beis Hastrarim. If the Rash says, the Shulchan Aruch Paskin, that in the Beis Hastrarim we don't care about chatzitzas when we're talking about a kli, so why do we care about chatzitzas over here? Well, what's the difference if the air doesn't get into that spot? So, who cares? It's in a Beis Hastrarim. In our other cases...
Why is it a Beis Hastrarim?
Why is it a Beis Hastrarim? You have an inkwell, and inside of the inkwell, in over here, is a place that's not exposed to the outside. It's 10 times more inside than...
From the bottom, it's exposed.
And if you open up your mouth, your teeth are exposed also.
You have to know what's going on.
No, because places that are covered up are Beis Hastrarim. Places that are inside, internal places, sometimes they're so internal they're called balua. But no, that doesn't mean anything. But this is internal. This is an inside spot. Under your armpits is a Beis Hastrarim also. The places that are just usually covered up are Beis Hastrarim. So that's a Beis Hastrarim. It's in the inside of a kli. That doesn't need to be titled. Well, it doesn't need to worry about chatzitzas. It's a kli, doesn't even have a problem with chatzitzas. So the that's his kasha. You don't see many welcome to say differently. To say what? It's not a Beis Hastrarim. No, I can hear the other way too. You can hear it too until you open your mouth. Until you look inside your mouth, your nose is a Beis Hastrarim. You know that? You can stick your nose or into your ear also. They're all Beis Hastrarim. Right? It's a Beis Hastrarim because it's a place that's basically a covered up place. It's used as part of the kli. You can get ink in there. You got food in your mouth also, you know. Okay, so the Chazal David says, the Chazal David appears on this hefta, and he says, you're right. He says it's 100%, it's true, it's a Beis Hastrarim. And the Rambam holds that when the Mishnah says that this thing has a chatzitza, can have a chatzitza, you have to have ear balls in there, is because the Mishnah is arguing on the Tosefta. Well, what I told you beforehand is a Tosefta, and he says, and the Mishnah argues on, and the Mishnah holds that there is a problem of chatzitzas in the Beis Hastrarim, and the Rambam passes like that. He learns that the Rambam passes like that if there's an issue of Beis Hastrarim, even by Keilim also, and he argues on the Rash. Okay?
Where's the Makar that Rash brings that there is none?
Hold on.
I just showed you the Makar. Mago.
For that Mishnah.
It's not a Mishnah, it's a Tosefta. I'm sorry. Yodas Akelim Shein Aruch Hasim L'Kotzes on the Tosefta. So the Rash, the Chazal said that Tosefta focus on the Mishnah, and the Ram passes like the Mishnah.
There's no other Makar.
That's the Makar. So he said, wait a second. So he said, now, you'll answer that for 1 second. But so that's very nice. That's very nice if you want to say Pshat Rambam. That the Ram passes that there's no such thing. He's Matayik, the way where the Ram brings the din of Yad Keilim, of Beis Hastrarim, that the Ram Taka holds, that's even by Keilim, very nice. But it doesn't help the Shulchan Aruch, doesn't help the Rash, okay? Doesn't help most people who pass in that there's no problem of Chatzitza by Beis Hastrarim. Yes.
I don't understand why you're comparing an air bubble to a chatzitza and not to a person who goes to mikveh without opening his mouth.
A person who goes to mikveh without opening his mouth.
You make sure there's no chatzitza, you clean your teeth.
Yes.
Then you close your mouth and there's an air bubble in your mouth. That's not a problem.
Right.
Because the space has started.
Good.
So here there's no chatzitza, there's an air bubble.
Call what you want to. So why is it a problem? So it's a person who goes to mikveh doesn't have to open it.
The answer Mishnah Chorene is that we are makbilen chatzitza Beis Hastrarim.
Yes.
It's not chatzitza, it's a bias mayim.
That's what you said. Everybody else learned that these bubbles over here are in the what we call chatzitzas. Okay, these ear bubbles in Vav, Zayin, and Ches that I just read to you. Those
how is that different than an air bubble in your mouth?
Because your mouth doesn't have to have bias mayim. Your mouth doesn't have to have water. It has to have no chatzitzas on it. And you said the ear should be a chatzitza. It's a good question. I can maybe answer your question in a minute. Maybe, I'm not sure. Okay, so in order to answer this question, okay, the Mishnah Achron answers it. Mishnah Achron. Yeah, it's entire says Mishnah Achron. Yeah. So he has kashrus.
Your mouth is royal to be a smile. As soon as you open your mouth, water comes in. That's not royal to be a smile. Water can't get in. You can't get in because you can't do it.
The easier answer is to say it's not Beis Hastrarim. That's the easier answer.
Say it's not Beis Hastrarim.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of
What's not
the
Beis
handle, the cavities. In the case of the handle, it's completely closed off, meaning that the kli comes to an end. You have almost like a wall in between the kli and the handle. So therefore, you could say that area, is the Beis Hastrarim.
Okay.
But here there's no wall, within the kli itself. I mean, the kli itself, the kli is like your body.
So what do you think about your nose? What do you think about your nose? Your nose is also Beis Hastrarim. The inside of your nose. There's nothing separating it, but it's just a concealed area. It's a kind of place that Varachat is called Basari, and the Beis Hastrarim needs to be royal. Bias mayim doesn't have to actually have bias mayim. So what's okay?
Mentally closed off.
You can.
That's not.
Okay.
To say, okay.
Okay. You can argue. That's fine. So now like this. I think that the answer is, in order to get to the answer, we need to understand better the din of Beis Hastrarim, and then that will help us answer this question. And that's like this. We accepted. I accepted also until I probe further. The Rash says that there's no din of chatzitzas on Beis Hastrarim for Keilim. Okay? Well, why is that true? What's the reason? Where did that come from? Even more than what's the reason for that is that isn't it odd that there's this big rule that Keilim don't have a din of Beis Hastrarim and doesn't say it in the place. It's not. You would think that there would be like a din that would say there's no din of Beis Hastrarim for Keilim. It's a diak from a Tosefta. It's not even in a Mishnah. It's not mufurish any place. We have to the point we have an argument that the Rash says it's one shot and the Tosefta says a different shot, and now we're hearing the Rambam has a third shot. So if this is true, that there's no din of Beis Hastrarim, the Gemara says, how do you know Beis Hastrarim? The Gemara says drushes, that Beis Hastrarim can't have chatzitzas. Okay, well where's the next one? The Gemara says, but by Keilim, don't worry about this, because of the other reason, give me something about it. Well, it sounds like something that's going on here, that we're seemingly an important principle, that by Keilim, it's buried in some Reish Beis, from a diak in a Tosefta. Some it doesn't seem like it's as mufurish as we would have wanted it to be. Okay? So, lucky for us, the Chicago Community College is learning the close now. So I spoke to a few people there. I was talking to them about some of these questions. So first part of this, I spoke to a number of people there about this. So Moshe Kaplan, he says to me, well, you should know what the reason is why there's no chatzitzas in Beis Hastrarim. And the answer to that question is in the Rash himself. Now, you might not see it in the Rash. And that's because it's only in some versions of the Rash. Okay? In the Oiz V'Hadar, it has it as a few extra words in the Rash. Right on that Mishnah, right, where he says the din, I forgot what the Rash is, on that din he says there's a few extra words. But if you don't like looking at things that just came out of someone's Ksav Yad someplace, it's also in the Rav and Mishnayos. And the Rash at the end of the Masechta has a pirush on a few halachas in the Tosefta, and he says it there, not as strongly, but he says it relatively, basically he says it there also. Okay? But the Rav and Mishnayos, who probably did have the full Rash, he says it there, he says it just as if it is, but it's in the Oitz V'Choter Rash. It's in brackets. In the Rash.
No, you said in the right.
In the Rav, the Bartanur. The Bartanur, yes, in the Pshat, as if that's a regular Pshat. He just says it without anything, Okay, he says like this. Pshat like this. He says, is the reason why Keilim don't have a problem with Chatzitzas on Beis Hastrarim is because in Keilim, people are not makpid on Chatzitzas that are on the Beis Hastrarim. In other words, this rule that Beis Hastrarim by Keilim don't have Chatzitzas is not really a new rule. There's nothing really special about that rule. It's not like some new principle that came out of some place. It happens to be that people are not makpid on Keilim about the Beis Hastrarim. Okay, he compares it when he speaks at the end of the Rashi, at the end of the Masechta. He talks about this. He compares it. He says, "You look, there's a mission that says that by a certain Beis Hastrarim, for a man it's not a chatzitza, and for a lady it's a chatzitza because women are makbid and men are not makbid." Okay, that's another mission that's important in Hilchos Nida.
But then you're talking about real chatzitzas.
So in a Beis Hastrarim.
Yeah.
In Beis Hastrarim.
That's it.
So he said, so their people, the men are not makbid and women are makbid. So he compares it to that. Now there it doesn't say it's because it's Beis Hastrarim, but he compares it to saying that there are things that people care about and things people don't care about. So the reason for my rule, which I'm being medayik from a Tosefta, my rule that Beis Hastrarim, you don't have to worry about Chatzitzas by Keilim, is because by Keilim people don't care about these kind of things. Okay, they don't have to not care about those kind of things. Okay, to the point that once you hear that, you realize, hey, you know what? Tosefos might not really argue on that. Tosefos is a different pshat in the case of the Magal. Okay, a different pshat as to why it's not a chatzitza. But if a person's not makbid, Tosefos is not going to argue with that. If you're talking not makbid, you're not makbid. Okay? Now, before we go on, how we get back to our inkwell over here, I have a question. I think Yossi was Maram said it, which is, maybe not. Why would we say that an air bubble is a chatzitza altogether? I mean, what's the reason for an air bubble to be a chatzitza? The air bubble, let's say my cups. Okay, let's go back to some. That's my cup and my bottle over here. Okay, there's an air bubble in there. Why is that a chatzitza? I mean, as soon as I'm going to want to put apple juice into my cup, the air bubble is going to disappear. Right? And that's what's going to happen when I take the cup and I try to fill it up with apple juice. Then there's not going to be air bubble. So why? If you're telling me that. Once I awaken you to this idea that we're really talking here about aim and makbid, so why am I makbid anyhow about air bubbles? Air bubbles don't bother anybody. It's like when we had at the beginning of the simon about when you have gooey stuff stuck onto your clay. You don't like gooey stuff on your clay. We understand. You're makbid of that. Yes, we spoke about it. Okay. That's a good question. Why isn't L'Chatzilu?
Now maybe another Gemara.
Okay, sit there.
I tell you, I understood that because I know what your green thing is over there. I understood that the whole inside is not going to work. It could be Chatzi or right.
Okay, so it can't be right. It's not possible to be right because there's the whole outside that's getting water on it, and then even if a drop of the inside gets on it, you already lost your right. Okay, I thought about that. Maybe it should be right. I don't think it's possible that it could be right because the outside and the inside have the same surface. So if you only got a drop of water on the inside, you're past your right. Okay, so this Rabbi Nato stuck in his thoughts of this. He said the reason why he thinks the air bubble is a chatzitza is because he says we look at the air bubble as if it's here. It's like as if nothing's there. It's like empty. Okay, he says, but really it's not really empty. It's really the air bubble is preventing. In this case, it's preventing water from getting to a certain spot. Okay, right now the water that would be filling up your whole cup or your bottle is not getting to its spot that it's supposed to because there's this thing that's in the way. Okay, so we think of it as air, we think the air is nothing. But imagine if it would be, I don't know, something else. It would be something solid over there. It's preventing the cup from being filled up. So if you're preventing it from being filled up, that's a chatzitza. It's not letting the cup do what it's supposed to do. It can't be filled up because there's this thing that's in the way that's stopping it. Okay, the thing is air, but in this... No, I'm not, because right now I'm trying to fill up the cup. If I try to fill up the cup and that thing is there, it stops my cup. Now.
But are you makbid because I'm makbid right now to be toivel? That's not cool.
No, I'm makbid because when I'm trying to fill it up, I want it to be filled up. When you try to fill this thing up, you can't fill it up when there's air in there. Okay, so it happens when you turn it over, you're going to remove the davar hachotzitz. But if the davar hachotzitz were to stay there, you wouldn't be putting your apple juice into it either. However you're going to use it, if that thing would stay there, it blocks the usage of this kli. If the kli is right side and the bubble would stick on the bottom, let's say it was in a balloon, okay, it would stick on the bottom, then it would be blocking your use of this cup.
The fact that it's going to disappear is not a reason why once it's here.
Disappear means I could remove it later, but right now it's in the bottom of my cup. If I were to turn the cup up and it stayed where it was, I couldn't use it the way it was supposed to. Okay, so now, back to, let's keep a few slides. Okay, back to our thing over here. The Rash said that a Beis Hastrarim, we don't care about chatzitzas because you're not makbid. Over here, you're for sure makbid that there shouldn't be air bubbles in the top that can't get out. And the reason is very simple, because if the inkwell tips over, that's the use of the top of the kli. Those cavities on the top, their use is so that when the kli tips over, the ink can flow into there. If you are in a situation where you can't get the air out of there, where the ink can't flow into there, you've lost the usage of that part. You're very makbid that the inside of that should never get stuffed up with something, because the whole reason you built this kli was bedafka, so that when the kli tips over, the ink should be able to flow into there. You need that to be emptyable in order to start with the ink. If this tips over, the ink can get into there. The way it is sitting in a mikvah, tipping it over will not get the air out. Means you could never get your water into there. Okay? And so that's why I think, you believe me on this or not, look at the picture on the side, from the Rambam's picture. Okay? To me, it was odd. Look where the Rambam put the neck in the picture. The Mishnah says you could only tevel it if you put a hole in there. So I would have thought that the hole should be on the top, so that the air could get out. If you make the hole the way the Rambam put the hole, the air is not going to get out of there. What do you gain by putting a hole in the side on the bottom? If you stick this into the mikvah, the water is going to go till here, and that's it. This part's going to stay filled with air because you put the hole on the bottom. Why do you put the hole? If you stick this to the mikvah like this, dunk it in like that, then that hole is not going to.
Put it on the top. If
you put the hole on the top here, then the air will escape out and it'll fill up with water. But if you put the hole over here, what? If you dunk it in like this, you're still have air. You have the same thing about a bottle from before. This is a bottle that's upside down. This is an upside down cup, and the air's not going to get out of here. So the way I understand it, the pshat is the whole reason you should be makbid, the whole reason we should care about Beis Hastrarim is because in case it tips over, if it turns on its side, you want the ink to be able to flow out. Nope. If it tips over, then the hole's on the top. If the tip's over, then your air's going to escape, and your ink will be able to flow into the thing. So in the Beis Hastrarim, we only have to care about it if there's a special reason for you to be makbid. Where the use of the kli is for, in case it tips over, you need it to be open. No, in case it tips over, then my air will escape enough that my ink will flow to where it's supposed to.
How's that going to work?
How's it?
Which way is it going to be two-dimensional?
It's three-dimensional. It's not, whichever way it tips, it's only. Unless it tipped literally on its hole, any other way that it tipped over, the air would escape out that thing enough to let the ink flow into where it's supposed to be. If it tipped over in any direction, then the hole will allow air to escape so that the ink can flow to where it's supposed to go.
The ink will go out the hole.
No, unless it flows literally hole down, any other way that it flows down, the ink will flow to the side, and the air will escape out. It will have a way to get out. It will make room for the ink to flow into its place. Unless it was mounted in the worst spot, a drop of area where it could fall in the wrong place, then it would get messed up. But by and large, every place it fell, the air would get out and the ink would be safe.
And the same thing about the bottle in the mikvah. If you open the bottle the other way,
if you hold the bottle, right, but the air in the bottle, the air that's in the bottle, bothers my use of the kli. It happens when I turn it right side up, I'm going to get that air out. Okay, but over here, if I turn the kli right side out, I will not get my air out. Everything's going to smooth. You're right, because when it tips over, then it'll force the air out. So you say, when I turn my bottle over, it'll force it over. I'll think about it. Okay, let me finish. I'm almost done.
I also still don't understand how the air in the air bubble is more of a tzitzit than the air in your mouth.
Because the air in your mouth, when you use your mouth, you don't care that there's air in your mouth. It doesn't bother anybody. Okay, so it doesn't mean anything to you. Okay, if I have a chatzitz in my mouth, if I have something stuck in my mouth, that bothers me. The air in my mouth doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect the use of my mouth. Okay, now, so my last point here is. That's a good. I'm not sure. Okay,
it's really it's right. It's right.
You say right because if the water would flow into there, it would push the air out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good way to say it. Okay, let's go on.
Why can't it be going to be a sign?
Why do you bring it to be a sign? It's a question.
No, I'm saying if the whole day is not chatzitza, That's mission market. So
Okay, let me just finish. We spoke about a long time ago. We spoke a long time ago about Keurigs, and one of the questions we talked about then was that on the inside of the Keurig there's a heating canister. Okay, there's a way to heat up the water on the inside, and that canister, the only way to get water into it is to pump it in. So we talked about it that, wait a second, if I'm going to stick it into the mikveh, let's say I decide that I want to stick it into the mikveh, I want to Tevillas, but I won't get water into that canister. So what's the
Metal?
Yeah. It's metal. What am I gaining if I Tevillas it if I'm going to stick it in and I can't pump water in when it's under water, obviously. So actually, at that time we said, go figure, that maybe since it's physically impossible to Tevillas it, because you Lamaisi, you won't get water into it, maybe you're not mechuyev. That in itself was its own possibility, maybe that gets me off the hook. Okay? But it was a question. What do you do about the fact that you can't get water into it? So now that we're believing or not believing what I said, now you could say like this. The inside of the heating canister is obviously a Beis Hastrarim. Okay, that's an enclosed area. Now, we saw twice here in the Shulchan that Beis Hastrarim, we don't care about things being in there. We only care about it, the way I'm explaining it, when it's in there that affects the use of the Kli. Okay, when I would be using the Kli, would the thing that's in there affected? That's when, in this case of the Kalmarin, that's when I care about that it's in there, because it'll affect the way my tipping over my Kli. Now, the air that's in the inside of the canister, that doesn't bother me. So it's not a chatzitza for me here, because it doesn't affect my use of the Kli. Because if I was using the Kli, meaning if I plugged it in, and the water was being pumped in, that would be fine. That wouldn't bother me then. That's the way the Kli is supposed to be used, with the air in there. It doesn't make a difference to anybody that there's air in there. Part of the functioning of the Kli is, it uses it even though there's air in there. When it pushes it out, it works around it, doesn't bother me. Okay? So this comment to me is an exception of when we should care about Beis Hastrarim having something in there. But if it's otherwise, if it's a plain, this Keurig, so it's a good old fashioned. It's the case that all the cases the Shulchan did say. It's a good old fashioned Beis Hastrarim, where we don't care about what goes on in Beis Hastrarim. We don't care about things being out of place in Beis Hastrarim. As long as it's submerged in the water, the fact that there's air bubbles or other things going on doesn't bother us.